Welcome to the Healthy Hustling Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Eric Broadworth, and with me today I have Alyssa Johncola. She is an account director at RegenMed, which is an up-and-coming healthcare business that's really taking some amazing data points from all over to determine what are the best options when it comes to healthcare treatments and interventions and everything like that. And how I got in touch with RegenMed was through the class 4 laser therapy that we're doing. We were working with them a little bit for neuropathy, and now we're working with them for cases including back and shoulder, and really to help determine from our standpoint, does laser therapy work? How well does it work? What are the long-term effects? And getting more data points around that. So I think that that's extremely important. So that way, also insurance companies and other businesses and everything like that can know, hey, here is how these different interventions work, how long you can expect them to work for. So that's a very brief outline there, and there's a lot more to it that RegenMed's doing. But thanks for coming on, Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Dr. Broadworth, rather, sorry.
You can call me Eric. That's
Okay,
totally,
great.
yeah, totally fine.
Um, yeah, so that was a great intro. Thanks so much. We're so excited to be working with you, and we hope to keep expanding it. I mean, we work with shockwave providers as well, PRP, orthobiologics. Our system can pretty much work with anything. And ultimately, we just want to collect the data that's important to understand how to improve patient outcomes, in the long term. And obviously, more and more people don't want to get surgery. So these are like great ways to do that.
Yeah. So if you could simplify, I guess, so what is RegenMed's like purpose or mission? I guess,
Sure.
can you hit on that?
Yeah. So we have a platform that we've created that is very flexible and very low cost, but we ultimately created it to collect real world evidence and real world data. So more and more, it's becoming more important to collect these data points after the fact. Originally, real world evidence and data was really concentrated around post market surveillance, but more and more manufacturers, health groups, insurance companies are seeing the importance of collecting this data not only for post-market surveillance, but also to understand the long-term effects and how the treatments are helping patients.
Yeah, that's really, I think, really interesting and something that's very much needed
Hmm.
because, especially when you look at things like insurance, right? And insurance is trying to dictate care and they won't cover. But if you can show that, hey, this is helping and this should be a covered service,
Hmm.
you've got more, leg room and things like that. That and like, so can you compare to like different, products on one versus the other? I guess,
Yep.
do you guys get into that as well?
We do. So we have RegenMed originally was we built the company around just any doctor or any clinician or provider who wanted to ask some kind of a hypothesis question. So obviously this is usually done around randomized controlled trials. I used to do a lot of clinical research at Penn. So they're very strict. It's really hard to get funding. And then when you enroll patients in those trials, I don't know if you have any experience with it, it's extremely rigid in who you can take, and the protocols are all the same. Well, in real life, in real treatment, that's not really ideal or really possible. Everyone's different. It's not really feasible to keep everybody the same protocol. So we originally built the company around like a private model. So like maybe you would come to us and say, I'm doing this. Maybe you have different exercises that you're using as a PT, maybe not around like a laser, for example. And I think that doing it in this stepwise process, people are seeing more improvement faster. And you could collect data around that and like understand and see if I treat patient A versus patient B with these different outcomes or these different exercises in this different stepwise process. PT is a little bit different. You could collect that data and understand what's happening. That was just private. You could come in, do exactly whatever you wanted. Now we have a physician's own circle model. So we could take groups of physicians, whether you guys know each other or don't, and you just enter the data around some orthobiologic or regenerative medicine device, like a shockwave device or a laser device. We can do a lot of others as well. But we collect all of that data and then we compare. And obviously, if you're doing a bunch of different doctors from different clinics, you're not all going to be using the same devices or treatment protocols. You all are going to have a different approach. So we get groups of you guys together in these physicians owned circles. You all own the data, which is another great big selling point of our product. We don't believe that anyone else should own the data but you guys because you're the ones collecting it and you're the ones getting the patients in and treating them. So we collect all this data and then we have circle hours every couple of months and we compare. Maybe your patients are doing better than another doctor's. We can dig into the data and understand why that's happening.
That's very interesting. So
All right, that was a lot of
I
talking too.
no, I think there's a lot to unpack there. So basically, it's like, for example, in the physical therapy world, right? The McKenzie method is a very like structured, I would say, treatment method where you could show, okay, I'm getting my people better in X amount of visits and times using the McKenzie method.
Mhm.
I think that's a good one. Are you guys doing anything with like trigger point dry needling and stuff like that? I'm just curious.
So no, this is really funny because my brother's actually a PT too, and he got like certified to do the dry needling and all of that. But and obviously maybe we shouldn't be talking about this, but what he got all this certification and now where he works, well, he's not allowed to do it apparently. For
Oh.
some reason, I don't know why. He
Mhm.
does it like privately, like obviously if someone like calls him up and wants to get it done, fine. But where he's practicing currently, he can't do that. So no, we're not, but also would be very interesting, right? Because like not that I know dry needling and acupuncture are different. Like he kind of explained it to me, but it kind of went right over my head.
Yeah.
But acupuncture up to this point is considered like I think it works, but a lot of people think it's kind of like woo-woo, like.
Hmm.
So dry needling, I think obviously would be a really cool one to do just because I think a lot more people are doing it. And a lot more patients are buying into it. But
Yeah,
it's out of
if
pocket cost too. So,
if that is something you're ever interested in, I'm
mhm.
happy to chat about that. We do a ton of dry needling.
Oh, do you really? Okay.
Yeah, we do a ton.
Yeah.
Big fan of dry needling. And I think it has its place. I will say that.
Yeah.
People, physical therapists watching, some are big fans of dry needling, some aren't. Just like anything, I think there's a time and a place for stuff.
Yeah.
And pros and
Absolutely.
cons, right? But that's ultimately also why we're having this conversation is RegenMed can help to determine what are the pros and cons of different treatment. And again, we found each other really through laser therapy and
Yeah.
photobiomodulation, light therapy.
Hmm.
What are you like? Are you seeing anything specific in that space, as far as like interesting points there, I guess? Any interesting information you've seen come out?
Well, so right now, all of our laser circles are very young. So I'll be honest, we only started the POC model a few months ago. So the data is not that old, but the data that we do have for laser is pretty positive for the most part. Everything's trending positively in the direction it should, depending on the patient-reported outcome measures that the patients are filling out, which is another great part of the system. So it's really hard to collect long-term outcome measures. Typically, like for me, when I was doing clinical trials, I would have to call them and like fill out all the surveys over the phone. It's a huge time burden for any staff member. But the software actually sends out reminders via email, text message, or the app if they choose to download the app at the first visit, and the patient just fill it out themselves, and then the doctor can monitor remotely. And obviously, I can see the anonymized data, but yeah,
And so, what are what are the points that you guys are tracking? So can you explain that? So if
yeah.
someone wanted to work with you, right, is the physical therapist, chiropractor, whoever, are they having to input like all of their notes, retype everything up? Is it a hassle? How easy or difficult is it? And then how are you determining like
Mhm.
that outcomes are either successful or not successful with
Mhm.
these different interventions?
So for the time burden for the physicians or the providers, we try to keep it as minimal as possible. We know that EHRs are a pain, note taking's a pain. You need to do all that for insurance, so we try to keep it as minimal and as quick as possible. So when I design these protocols, I obviously take. I don't do this every day. I love reading about it. I love researching it, but the providers are ultimately the ones who know more about it than I do. I don't do it every day. So I will take a protocol, like for example, we have one for the laser for low back pain, for example. So I will do some research and try to understand like what are the most clinically significant data points around laser treatment that would be good to collect when treating someone for low back pain. So ultimately, what my research shows is you want to collect the wavelength that they're using, the power output, the spot size and the head size if you can, and then the treatment time, and obviously the application area, like where you're actually holding the laser over. So with all of that, we would be able to then filter the data once we have enough to understand, like, is it an application area? Is it the wavelength? Is it the power output? But ultimately, all that goes to say, I make these surveys to be able to be filled out in less than a minute. So you should be able to go in pretty quickly. Obviously, most people, not everyone, but a lot of people are already collecting all this in their EHR. So it's kind of like just going through and like quickly putting it in our system as well. Um, Now, for to understand how the patients are improving, well, they're filling out these surveys themselves at home after the treatment. So I like to use standardized PROMs or patient-reported outcome measures. So these are things that have been very well studied and are standardized. So we put those in surveys, and then the patients fill them out at set time points. So for depends on the protocol, but usually we do like 2 weeks, 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, and 24. And we ask them about any side effects as well. So we are also collecting like safety and efficacy data as well.
And you're talking about, for example, since we're talking about back pain, like
Yep.
the Oswestry Disability Index and ODI,
Yes. And
correct?
VAS in general. Yeah. So
And
we'll
the
ask,
VAS.
yeah, we'll say, hey, can you indicate on the VAS scale like how your pain is right like currently today? And then the ODI has like a set of questions, obviously, that they fill out. And then a score comes out with both of those.
Yeah. What I like about that is I feel like it does help to track subjectively on whether the patient is finding that this to be successful.
Hmm.
Because you might find that, oh, they can go and do all these things, right? But then they're reporting something else, right? So,
Right.
uh, success for the clinician can vary from what the patient determines is successful. And
Hmm.
ultimately, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters on what the patient thinks is successful. Are they getting the outcomes that they need
Hmm.
to, live life and have the quality of life that they want to live?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so if someone has a laser,
Hmm.
does it matter what kind of laser that they have if they want to enroll? Does it have to be a class 4, class 3? Does that any of that matter?
So right now the we have class 4 lasers specifically, but if someone came to me and said, "Hey, I would like to do the same thing but with a class 3 laser," we could totally do that. Obviously the difference in class 4 versus class 3 is like the power output, right?
Mhm.
So it's just like a very simple like change for me. We try to keep it I'm trying to keep the classes separate just because it's easier to compare the data. And it doesn't matter who, like if you have any manufacturer, we could put you in. It does not matter. So it's very easy for me to add in anything into the surveys because we do ask the whoever's putting in the survey to fill out which manufacturer for the device that they're using. But it's very, very easy for me to add any of that. So if anyone were to like look at it and say like, oh, I use this device, but it's not listed, very easy for me to go in and change it.
Yeah, I'm just curious, are you seeing a big difference in devices or are they all fairly similar? Whether that's laser or shockwave, because right, like every every manufacturer vendor, right, theirs is always the best, and here's why theirs is the best. And
Hmm.
it's like it can be so confusing.
Hmm. I
As a
know.
clinician and someone who like works in it, it's like, and part of it is does the device even do what it says it does? Does it have the wavelengths it says it does in the sense of like laser? But are you finding a big difference between
So
vendors and manufacturers?
that's a good question. I would actually have to get back to you because I haven't at this moment really compared. But because I'm just looking at how the patients are trending in general. But I do know for one of our shockwave circles, we do have two big PIs in it, and they each use a different device by a different manufacturer. So it would be very interesting for me to compare, which I can do. I just honestly haven't done that quite yet, just because the data set isn't so big. We have about, I think, I want to say like 50. So it's big, like that's a lot.
Hmm.
But I would like to see it at a couple hundred before I make a comparison like that. And I can easily do it now, but I haven't done it just yet. So it would be interesting to look at, which is ultimately why we asked that question in the survey.
Yeah. And I think that's just that's going to be really good for everyone
Hmm.
to weed out, good actors and bad actors and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard too because I know these devices are very, very expensive. So, like, if you're wanting to do it and invest that into your clinic and use it, you want to make sure you're buying the right one, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, the last thing I want to do is invest tens of thousands of dollars into something that uh doesn't ultimately do what it says it's going to do.
I know.
What I always say is when I invest in a big device as a business owner in a healthcare, it's got to, number one, get results. Like it's got to do what it says it's going to do and help my patients get better faster. And then
Hmm.
number two, it's also got to produce an ROI. It's got to do
Yeah,
those two things as a small business owner. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
right.
Because if it doesn't do what it says it's going to do, it's not going to produce an ROI. But then also, are people actually are they willing to spend money on it?
Yeah,
Because otherwise it's just going to sit and collect dust, and then that was a waste of
mhm,
money, even if
right.
it, you know, could cure cancer, right? But it's not doing
Yeah,
anything. It's just sitting there.
right.
That's no good for anyone.
Hmm.
Yeah. Who is like the perfect person to work with you guys?
Hmm.
What would you, I guess, say there?
I mean, pretty much anyone, right? But I would say we obviously like to we don't want to limit people, right? So if someone came to us and they said, "Well, I do laser treatment for low back, but I only do like 5 cases a month or something like that." Well, that I obviously like fine for us because we already have the circle created and everything else. So it's just us pretty much enrolling the person into that circle and
Hmm.
going from there. We would love to see someone who does more patients a month, but ultimately data is data. So pretty much anybody, honestly, like we wouldn't turn anyone down at this point, I don't think. I just think too, it would be motivating, even if somebody said, "Oh, I'm only doing 5 patients a month." Well, once you collect a data set with other doctors, you can look at the aggregated data, the anonymized data among all the doctors in the circle. And if you see that that is really effective and working, you can send out these graphs to your patients and say, "Hey, I have this laser. Right now, you don't have to tell them you're only doing 5 patients a month, but people are really seeing improvement. So if you're interested in possibly doing this, yes, it's out of pocket and this is the cost, but people are improving 3 months out. Their ODI went down, or I think the higher is better for ODI. Their ODI went up by this many points on average, the score."
And that's, I think, really interesting. I think a bigger thing, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, and this was based on a previous conversation when we had Mike Tierney, we were chatting with briefly,
Hmm.
but direct to employers,
Yes.
right? Like that can use this data.
Hmm.
Um, that I think that's would be massive. Am I wrong as far as saying like, here's how my treatments are stacking up, and here's what you can expect to save. I
Oh yeah.
know, with my business at Fuel here, we're doing more direct to employer services and things like that.
Hmm.
Because the current model is it's broken. I think everyone can agree for the most part that healthcare costs they're rising. They're not getting
Yeah.
cheaper. Everyone is sick of the traditional things that are, I would say, like approved. Like, for
Hmm.
example, I go and I get my blood work done for the year, and it's like my cholesterol and maybe my A1C. It gives you these data points that aren't super helpful. And
Right.
so I think more and more people are looking for other options that are actually going to get to the root cause of issues to make
Hmm.
sure that just we can live a higher quality life, and
Hmm.
prevent a lot of issues versus being reactive to everything.
Hmm.
And then that the interventions that we're using are actually helpful. And if
Hmm.
employers can see that,
Hmm.
they're going to be more likely to invest in it because
Right.
it's going to save them a ton of money. Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
No, obviously, yeah. So I love regenerative treatment, but obvious. And I will say, so I actually had to like I went to like an ENT recently for something else. And I said, like, oh, like I work with like a lot of like regenerative medicine or people, providers for regenerative medicine. And the MD there, great doctor, but he said, oh yeah, not really respected or anything, right? And I said, what do you mean? Because I get PRP treatments in my knees. So I have knee OA in both of my knees, and I
Yeah.
get PRP in them. And I would say I started getting them a year ago or 2 years ago, I think at this point. I couldn't run like I was in so much pain for like my knees, just like anything, doing anything with them. And now I'm running half marathons and I might sign up for a marathon next year.
That's
Like
awesome.
I think it works, or I like maybe if it's a placebo effect, it's one of the strongest placebo effects I've ever dealt with because I don't have pain.
What I tell people anyway when it comes to down to placebo effects, like as long as you're getting an effect, like it really
Yeah,
doesn't matter. You're getting the outcomes that you want. The fact
right.
that you went from not being able to run to now you're thinking about a marathon
Hmm.
is I mean is incredible. And people will tell me that all the time for the laser too. They're like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this actually works or it's a placebo effect. Like they're seeing results,
Yeah.
but they're still not bought in. And ultimately I tell them like, well, you're noticing results, aren't you? So it really doesn't matter how we got there. Like
Yeah, exactly.
um, but
But ultimately, sorry, I got a little
you're
segue there.
good.
So, I do think that it's really powerful. Like the data will be very powerful once we have like a statistically significant set, right? You can't, if you have 5, 600, 300, 400 patients in a circle. So circles and observational protocol, sorry, so that might be a little confusing. We call them circles. So if you have them all in the same observational protocol, they're all filling out their VAS and ODI. They're, someone's doing the laser treatments and putting in the data. If they're all seeing improvement and this is all at different clinics, how can you deny the results? Like if they're all doing better, you know?
Hmm.
So ultimately, once you have a data set like that, if we keep pushing it and presenting it to these employer groups, insurance companies, everything else, it's going to be for them ultimately how much do you want to pay down the line when you could, instead of making this an out-of-pocket cost, covering some portion of this now, and then that way, preventative treatment at this point, as
Yeah.
opposed to surgery or something else later.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that.
I hope that answered the question. I do tend to get a little carried away.
No, no, you're good. I had a thought and the thought like slipped my mind.
Oh
I was trying
no.
trying trying to remember on where I was going with that. So obviously you can do these circles. So again, a circle, explain that again for people just so they know.
Yeah, so a circle is just a group of physicians in the same observational protocol. So for the physician-owned circles, like I
Which can
said,
be physical therapists or chiropractors as well.
anybody
Yeah.
can be in it. Yeah.
Okay.
And um, all we do is we have them collecting data. It does not have to be the same data, obviously. Like we just ask you, what's your power? Like for laser, for example, wavelength power, head size, spot size, and then total time and the application area. So you're answering all the same questions. You're obviously all going to have different answers, which is more than reasonable to assume. Um, with that, oh, and then continuous wave versus pulsed for as well for laser. It's like a big operation mode difference.
Hmm.
But in any case, you're all answering the same questions, but when we look at the data into the nitty gritty, we'll be able to see like, is there a specific wavelength that's more beneficial for low back? Is there a specific application area, depending on where you're applying it? Like, obviously, you're applying it to the low back, but there might be other surrounding areas that you're also applying it to. That's helping with the low back treatment as well. And we can look into that as well to see if that's also affecting the treatment and if people are improving better.
So then are you going to be able to see with this was what was had popped into my head,
Yes. Hmm.
whether things are a placebo or not? Are you going to be able to help weed that out as to like, this is basically a placebo effect?
I mean, I think yes, just because, like I said in the example, we don't have a set this big yet. I would love to get a set this big, but if we have 500 or 600 people all improving by the same like approximate like average percent of like their ODI or the VAS is decreasing or ODI is getting higher, um, I just think it's kind of hard to deny,
Yeah.
when there's that many people having a positive effect.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And I think ultimately what you could do too is like take that data and compare it to your I guess the standard of care, right? So
Oh
and in
yeah,
my
sure.
case, physical therapy, like most people, if they're getting better in 12 visits and you're getting them better in 10, and the main thing is that you added a laser in, well,
Yeah,
probably the laser.
it's probably helpful. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this is just super powerful stuff. And then for these clinicians and businesses out there, there's so many competitors, and why should people come to see you? Well, you're going to be able to exactly demonstrate and show, hey, here are the outcomes that we're getting
Mhm.
compared to the standard. So do you want just the average outcomes, or do you want the best outcomes? So
Mhm. Yeah.
that's how I like to phrase things of like, do you want just okay, or do you want to try to knock this out of the park and get the best results possible?
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's the perfect way to say it to a patient, especially when they're paying for it, like unfortunately everything is not just regenerative treatments, but life in general is so expensive right now. So I live in Philadelphia on the East Coast. Cost of everything is skyrocketing. I'm sure same with where you're
mhm.
located.
Oh yeah.
So like you just want to make sure you're getting a really good bang for your buck, if you will, even if it is around your health. Unfortunately, cost is cost, budget's budget. Like you only have so much money to dedicate to certain things. But if you're going to get results for it and you're in pain every day and you're going to say, I think you'll not have pain in about 3 months, I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. No, this has been super helpful. So if people want to get involved, and what's the best way for them to contact you, ask you questions? And then are you looking for any specific things? I know from the sounds of it, right? Like laser for low back. So any laser providers out there who want to be in a low
Anything doesn't
back
have to be low
circle.
back either. Like it could be
Right.
anything. Like they could, it's very easy for me to make a protocol quickly now because I have like the general um clinical protocol, if you will. And it's so easy for me. If you came to me and said, hey, I want to do this for, I don't know, like an ankle or something, we could easily put that in. And then I would do some research if like the FFI or the FODI would be better for like foot and ankle, depending on
Yep.
what you're treating for. Very easy for us to do. We do a form on our website. You can go on Join a Circle and then like fill out and I can give you that link. And they can fill it out, or they could obviously email me. My email is just ajohncola@regenmed.com. But the easiest way would probably be to fill out that submission form. And then that way I would get in contact with them or one of my colleagues, and then we would, talk to them briefly. I know you guys are busy, so we always keep the first phone call like 10, 15 minutes. Just to talk about what the platform looks like and then what we do. And then, yeah, that would be pretty much it. But we could make a protocol for anything
Cool.
you can think of. So,
So yeah, I know so RegenMed's doing a lot with obviously laser,
mhm.
shockwave,
Mhm.
and possibly dry needling in the future. And then
Yes. Yeah.
PRP, are you doing
Any
IV
orthobiologics.
are you doing
Yeah.
IV therapy too?
We don't, but obviously we can. And we also just launched a big collab with longevity docs. So we're looking at, we have a longevity circle made around GLP-1s too. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's like obviously a very big thing right now.
So anyone with GLP-1s could go into that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that one. And then
Yeah,
we have others too.
there's a good amount of people I know that are doing um have a business with the GLP-1s.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I don't know if you can necessarily share this. Do you have any thoughts on the GLP-1s?
So, um, so as me, not Regen Med Alyssa, me personal Alyssa,
Yeah.
um, I do think they obviously have benefits for a certain demographic of people. So someone getting GLP-1s, who's severely diabetic, morbidly overweight, who, it's like becoming a difference of I'm going to add years to my life if I lose this weight and use the GLP-1,
Mhm.
very beneficial for that person. There is some interesting data coming out around if you get GLP-1s for longevity, like there are certain applications for that. For weight loss, I don't know if I agree, but that's just my opinion, not Alyssa Johncola, account director at Regen Med's opinion, Alyssa Johncola, regular Philly girl opinion.
Yeah.
So
I really try to take everything I think there's a time and a place for everything, right? Like
yeah,
even going back to dry needling, like I think that dry needling isn't for everyone,
yeah,
but it can be very helpful in the right application and with the right people. I think
right,
GLP-1s, same thing. I do think like I'm a little hesitant and fearful as to how quickly and widespread they're just getting sent. And
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people aren't having the tough conversation
Mhm.
necessarily, and maybe they have, right? Like if you've tried
Right.
everything else and you've
Yeah.
tried exercise and you've really tried dieting and you've
And it's
tried
just not working.
and
Right.
it's just not working and this is the next step, okay.
That's
But
fine.
like,
Yeah.
I really think we need to make most people could do really well making lifestyle habits, and then that way
Mhm.
too they're not relying on a specific um product to continue to get these results, because then when you go off of them there are side effects, like you gotta,
Yeah.
there are definitely serious side
The
effects,
drop off
and
is like
so
crazy after you go off of it for sure. Also, my fear with it is, and like this is maybe this is just me with, the Google algorithm because of the things I look up, and then like this is what I'm seeing when the articles pop up. Um, there is, if you're not regularly like lifting,
oh,
if
the
you're
loss of
just
muscle
doing it for
mass.
a weight, oh my gosh, crazy. And that's
Hmm.
why I'm so cynical about it. Like what you just said is true. Like obviously if you have like there are people with like very like crazy metabolic makeups that maybe they're doing everything right and they're just not losing the weight. And honestly, like if you go to an endo, they're gonna say, okay, just eat less. Whether that ends up being like less than 1,000 calories a day, like eat less. So, and they don't really care because they're like, oh, well, all of your, hormone levels are normal, so you should be fine. But we obviously know that it's not always like the end all be all. So in any case, the loss of muscle mass is crazy and very dangerous. There are like 20 something year olds like, getting osteoporosis, which is insane. So that's like what I'm seeing, and I don't love that. So, like you said, if it's like appropriate, there's a time and a place for sure. But you have to make sure you're doing it with caution and doing all the right things to set yourself up for success, which means lifting your butt off, honestly. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely should be exercising with it, and also trying to then not make sure you're just like, oh, well, I'm doing this, so I'm less hungry, so I'm just gonna have the piece of pizza or cupcake
Right,
instead
right,
of
right, right.
like, chicken, and yeah. So
Yes. Yes.
100% agree. So
Sorry, I could talk about this for
I
forever because
agree
like a
that
lot of
we're,
people are on it right now, which
yeah,
like I said, time and place. Like if it's like the last resort and this is what works for you, and you're consulting your doctor, which everyone has to get prescribed it, totally fine. But I also think it's a shame I do feel bad for providers because everyone heard about this and they're all going in saying, I want to lose weight and I want to get it. And doctors are telling their patients like, no, you're healthy. BMI doesn't really matter.
yeah,
But if they're pushing it and pushing it, you know.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I completely agree. And some docs too, if they're just like, oh yeah, whatever you need, just write it
I
off. And
know. I
I,
know.
it's, it is a little bit of, I would say like eerily familiar or similar to the opioid stuff. Like, and not to
Oh
say
my
that this is
God.
as addictive as opioids, but like,
And
how do
yeah,
we get there, right? Really quick
exactly the
fix,
same
a
way.
really quick
Exactly the same
fix.
way. I know.
So,
Yeah.
um,
I'm sorry.
no, you're good. I love talking about that stuff. I could talk about it all day.
Joe.
So if you are listening, you're a PT, chiropractor, healthcare provider, and you're interested in these physician-owned circles, whether you have a laser, shockwave device, anything like that, or interested in creating your own and seeing these data points and how you can get involved, I'm going to put the contact information for Alyssa and RegenMed down below. Feel free to reach out to myself. In my experience, it's been nothing but positive. They've made it extremely easy. And I just think it's really important as a healthcare provider to be able to, uh, give this data, so that way we can just continue to get better results. And I want to be able to improve the results I'm getting with my patients in my practice. And I know a lot of others out there want to do the same. So if you're looking to make better improvements and also get rid of these bad actors, because it's going to weed out, seriously though, it's going to weed
No,
out the
I
bad
know.
actors of like, oh yeah, we fix this and this and this, and like, right, you're just talking to a salesman who really doesn't know anything. It is going to force them to change, otherwise they will not survive. So
Yeah,
and I think that's for the better for everyone, right? So
definitely.
survival
Yeah.
of the fittest. Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else I should add to that, Alyssa?
No, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. It was so nice to talk to you. I know we work together, but I know you're very busy, so it was nice to have the time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for listening.